Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's the first video in a new series. It's the off-season predictions. I did a little bit of this last year leading up to the NFL draft throughout the playoff season. And we're starting again. We're doing the Carolina Panthers, who are in hell. And I love messing with Carolina fans. I kind of called all of Carolina's problems. I didn't realize they'd be the worst team in the NFL. But I did say that they had one of the worst coaching staffs. They did. I said that they were not going to be good necessarily in the offensive line. They weren't. And I said that their defense was probably going to let down just a little bit. They did. So, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Panther fans. I am really sorry. Actually, I'm not, because you guys were really incredulous in that comment section on that deep dive video. And I was right the whole time. So, oh, you don't know ball, bro. Well, maybe now you guys will listen to me, because I'm going to help your team not be the worst team in the NFL next season. Now you are kind of up against the wall here just a little bit. We're going to go over what I would do in terms of your head coach. You guys did some interviews there. And it's kind of what I would do and kind of also what I expect you guys to do. So I don't expect you guys to do what I would do, because what I would do is get Jim Harbaugh and just throw the entire bank account at him. But you guys won't be doing that. So it's kind of what you guys would do in terms of the coaching thing. But then I'm going to talk about what I would do in the in-house signings, free agencies, extensions, all that, bringing guys back. And we're going to talk about who I would bring in free agency, guys who I would add to the roster to try to help make them a little bit better. It's going to be really difficult, I think, though, to get in free agents. Unless you get a guy like Jim Harbaugh, you're not. And then talk about a draft strategy here. So let's get into the actual content of the video, and let me try and save this absolutely in the mud, terrible, garbage franchise. So we're going to start with the head coach, and I got a sneaky suspicion you guys are going to keep Ejiro Evero, who's the current defensive coordinator, did not get fired along with Frank Reich in that offensive staff, and I have a lot of concerns about it. I really, really have some concerns about it. I don't like the idea of keeping anyone in-house from your coaching staff. I think Ejiro Evero, though I think he's a pretty decent defensive coordinator, I'm just not... Clean house, man. Clean house. I know it's going to be difficult because you don't have a first-round pick, and you were the worst team in the NFL to really keep somebody, and maybe you keep Evero because you want to keep some of the other defensive players. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I just don't love it, but the first thing you need to do is you need to worry about Bryce Young, and that's where the offensive rankings really come into play here. This is the coaching rankings here. You were 31st in points for, you were last in pass yards, second to last, or third last in passing touchdowns. You didn't even particularly run the ball very well. You couldn't get in the end zone. You couldn't gain yards. The only thing that you guys did quite well was not turn the football over, but that's also a sign to me of just not being adventurous enough to succeed in the NFL, because it's not like you were the best in terms of not turning the ball over. You were last in passing yards. And it's not like you weren't throwing the football, because you were in the upper half of the NFL in throwing the football, 13th. So you just weren't doing it successfully, which is a sign of a lack of weapons maybe. The offensive line was 30th in sacks allowed. That's not great. You couldn't convert on third down. In the red zone, you were in the bottom half of the league. So there's a lot that has to go on here, which is why I feel like you need to get a guy who can improve this offense. And the only way you can get them, because you don't have that first round pick and you already got a rookie quarterback who used the number one pick you sold the barn for, it has to be somebody you're willing to pay. And that's why, for me, maybe you go Todd Monken instead in Baltimore. Maybe he's willing to take on this absolute crap show. And then Evero, who seems to be the guy they're gonna take and they're gonna keep as the head coach, much to my dismay, didn't particularly do well in terms of defensive rankings either. Okay, yeah, we were third in pass yards. We were fourth in pass touchdowns allowed. You were also had the least amount of pass attempts allowed as well. Teams didn't have to throw the ball on you. They got up early and they stayed up. You didn't get sacks. You didn't force turnovers. You didn't particularly perform well in the red zone. You didn't stop teams from getting in the end zone. The only thing you did was you were fourth in total yards, but that's because you were in situations where teams were just shortening games on you because you couldn't do anything against them and you couldn't stop them. They kind of just controlled the entire game on both sides of the ball every single week. You did have some good defensive performances more often than offensive performances. Sure. I just don't know that keeping that together, it's almost like throw it all out. Throw it all away. Look at this. Throw it all away. Ugh. Yuck. Gross. You stink. You're not good. Ugh. You are going into the offseason with $38.2 million in salary cap. Now, it's going to be a little difficult for me to do all the salary cap magic that NFL teams do. Just full disclosure on that because I am using the over-the-cap calculator. So, how much they gain in cap from restructuring and trades and all that comes from there. And we'll start with the in-house. You got 3 guys on the defense that I feel like you should retain, and that's obviously Brian Burns is number 1. If you didn't trade him last offseason, you got to make sure you keep him. He did have a down year, but I will say that the lack of a complementary edge on the opposite side probably did affect him and his performance overall. You are going to have to pay him 5 years, $110 million, $32 million bonus, which, you're kind of avoiding making him the highest paid player, but you got to do something. I think tagging him and then extending him is probably the way to go. Marquise Hayes was a good early down defensive end. I think you can retain him on a 1-year deal, keep it relatively cheap. But you still got to focus, maybe I'd say in the draft in particular, in getting somebody who can complement Brian Burns. Frank Louvu, who came off a great year, had 2 really good years, and then kind of again had a down year this year. Just wasn't playing as strong in the run in the past this year as he did last year. I still think he's worth retaining. He's got some good versatility. And I think you can get him for, again, relatively cheap in comparison to who you can get else at like that linebacker hybrid pass rusher position. I think you can also restructure some deals. Taylor Moton and Adam Thielen, I think, are the easiest ones to restructure just to get a little bit of extra cap space to work with. You get 8.2 from Taylor Moton and 4.9 from Adam Thielen. And then you can, focus that extra cap space on getting guys complementary to those 2 players. J.C. Horn, I keep hearing about how he's on the way out of there, never really worked out. Couldn't stay on the field. I think he played pretty decent when he was on the field. Even I would say played good when he's on the field. But if he's not going to be healthy, if he can't stay healthy, if he can't stay on the field, then it's kind of like you got to move on, right? You can't retain him. You got to worry about his 5th-year option coming up. He is a top 10 pick with a 5th-year option. So I think that with all the rumors of him getting traded, that'll eventually come to fruition here. And I think you can get an early day 3 pick for him. I think somebody will be willing to give up a 4th-round pick for him, and you save $3.5 million in the cap. You also need to extend Derek Brown, who was probably your best player this year. Really came into his own in all phases as a run stuffer, as an interior pass rusher. So I'm giving him the 4-year, $89 million extension, $30 million signing bonus, and structuring it so it's only a $7 million first-year cap hit, I think, and then sort of pushing that contract down the line. So you've retained him, and you've sort of converted salary cap into bonuses and all that. I believe that I used the Daron Payne contract as I did this a couple days ago, and I've already got a couple of these in the can, so I apologize, guys, but I think this is I used the Daron Payne extension for that. I expect him to get somewhere between Daron Payne and Dexter Lawrence. I think that's fair, and of course you're gonna have to overpay. I think that's the thing, is like you kind of always got to overpay a little bit on these players, even if he's not as good. Or if he hasn't had as much consistency, say, as some other guys, you got to overpay a little bit. So being able to retain all those guys barely touched the salary cap with the restructures and the trade. So it's a $29.4 million spending cap to go into free agency with. And some of the team needs, we've talked about them a little bit as we go along. I think getting another wide receiver is imperative. Getting some interior offensive line help. You do have Icky, who coming into his third year, you don't want to just give up on him. He had a pretty good first year, down year this year. I think getting guys on the interior will really help as well. Getting someone on the interior with Derek Brown, I think, is also really important to for this team. Getting somebody in the secondary at the corner position. Now that with assuming J.C. Horn is gone, you still got to fill that need, even if you keep J.C. Horn. And then getting a complimentary edge to Brian Burns, hopefully keeping Brian Burns and then finding a complimentary edge for him. If you lose Brian Burns, I think edge becomes easily the number one need on this entire team. I would say it right now ranks probably as like a number two, probably behind wide receiver. I'd probably like to put my focus more on getting Bryce Young some weapons. But without Brian Burns, I think it's easily number one. And just going through free agency, thinking about who would want to come to this team, it's going to be tough to get some of those high-level free agents. I look at Damian Lewis, who is like consistently like a middle-of-the-pack interior offensive lineman. I think you can put him at the other guard position opposite Austin Corbett. 3 years, $18 million, $3 million bonus. You know, he is losing out his spot in Seattle, sure. I think you can get him to play. If he plays like a middle-of-the-pack interior offensive lineman, I think you're in good shape. And then you just hope for the improvement of Icky at the left tackle position. I think that will be what raises the entire ship that is the offensive line. And then getting a veteran corner, Chidobe Awuzie. I basically gave him the same contract that he signed when he went to Cincinnati from Dallas. 3-year, $22 million, $3 million bonus. And you can probably, you can maybe front load the deal, kind of like what they did in Cincinnati as well, which turned out to be very, very advantageous for Cincinnati. The last couple of years, they were able to then spend money elsewhere in free agency and with contracts without losing quality players. So I could see maybe using that same strategy with Awuzie, especially because it's only like $7 million a year. You can probably give him 10 in his first year. And it won't really make that much of a difference to your salary cap. It's only $3 million extra. So that leaves them with $15.1 million to fill out the rest of their roster. You can structure contracts in a certain way and yada, 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 all that good stuff. Maybe restructure a couple guys here and there to free up a couple extra $1 million. I just couldn't find anything that would be truly significant for me to point out. But it's 15.1 to fill out the roster. I think is it's a good little number to have, given their situation. And of course, when you re-sign Brian Burns, you can structure it in a way where he doesn't take a big cap hit in his first year. The void years and all that stuff for, who knows how they do stuff anymore. So the draft strategy is real simple. You're coming in, you don't have a first round pick. You traded the first overall pick this year to get Bryce Young last year. You need to try and maybe get another second round pick. So maybe you can trade down a bit and trade to maybe Green Bay is in a situation where they have 2 second round picks and they want to get to that 33. Maybe you grab both their second round picks to move up, for them to move up that way, and then maybe give up like a fourth or a fifth to sort of compensate for that. But I feel like you need to get it because you need to get help for Bryce Young at wide receiver. Donnie Mitchell, Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy, Xavier Legette. I think getting either one of those 4 would be great. And then getting a legitimate edge 2 or edge 1 for that matter, depending on what happens with Brian Burns. I think Braylon Trice, JT Tuamalo is going to be within striking range for them, even if they do trade back a bit. And then there's Chris Braswell from Alabama, who could also be thrown in there as an option. But I think they really should focus on getting 2 of these players out of the 6 that I listed. I think if they get 2 of those guys, then they're in great shape after this draft. I would say that would be like an A draft for them, if considering the circumstances as well. I kind of like the idea maybe more of Troy Franklin out of the 3, and I think Braylon Trice is a better guy. Braylon Trice probably won't last though. I think out of all these guys here, I think Donnie Mitchell and Braylon Trice are the most likely to find their way into the first round. I thought JT Tuimoloau was going to be a great first round option. So the fact that he's kind of falling down the board a bit, I hope if he does declare for the draft, then he could be somebody who could be a sneaky steal for them. And I think a good compliment to Brian Burns on the outside. And there you have it. I did my best, Carolina. You guys are pretty much hopeless. Your fans are terrible. Your organization is run by a moron. And you should probably hire me, because clearly I know more about this organization than any of you do out there in Panther Nation. I'm just having fun with you guys. Just having fun messing with you guys. I'm going to have fun for a long time, considering how right I was in my deep dive series in the preseason. You guys thought I was stupid, and I will not stop harping on that. You guys are my new favorite fan base to crap on. So thank you for that. I'm going to have a lot of fun going forward forever and ever. And seriously, though, leave in the comment section what you guys think of the moves that I made and how you guys feel about those moves. So I will see you guys with the next video next time.